I have learnt a thing or two about the Randle cycle in the low carb down under con. I feel lots of experts don't know about it. Even Paul Mason is a Randle cycle in the education system. Unfortunately, some of if you look at physiology textbooks, it's sort of explained, but explained in a really poor way. So it tends to be explained in a way of insulin resistance and stuff like that. Insulin resistance is sort of the outcome of the Randle cycle. It's really the thing behind the so-called insulin resistance is really the Randle cycle activation. And the degree of insulin resistance depends on the gradient. So Randle cycle activation will happen in different tissue types at different rates based on the amount of energy substrates in the actual cells. And then when you get excess, those receptor sites, the GLUT receptor sites, and also the CD36, they'll get down-regulated because the cell's trying to protect itself from excess energy coming in, because there are rate-limiting enzymes, can only do so much. And so when you get excess energy in the bloodstream, obviously all these cells will start down-regulating. They've taken enough, they'll down-regulate. And it takes a certain amount of time to jump out of, and then the gradient will rise as the substrates increase in the bloodstream. And that's what we call it's an on-off and then a gradient. And the gradient and how long it persists depends on a lot of factors. It depends on how much muscle mass have you got. So how quickly can you take out of the bloodstream, the glycogen? One. Second, how quick, in terms of all the lipoprotein pathways and transcription factors that are involved, how quick can you basically deal with circulating fats? So all these things will affect to a different gradient the Randle cycle activation and deactivation. So once you get to a certain level, the cells start starving, and the more and more starving, and the levels come down, the gradient starts dropping off. And sometimes due to hormonal things as well that are at play, that Randle cycle could last for a bit longer and be systemically, which is in the whole body, deactivated up to 3 days potentially. So it depends on your lean muscle mass and your physical activity, how quick that will happen. So if you're sedentary, it may take up to 3 days. So, if you're not sedentary, it may happen much earlier. So that's where exercise, it's not that exercise actually reduces fat weight. It's that basically it ameliorates the Randle cycle much faster. That's where the health benefit comes from, because it's taking out the substrates much quicker out of the bloodstream, allowing the cells to upregulate those receptor sites close to the cell membrane and actually go, oh, we're here, give us more nutrients. So, yes. Yeah, a lot of these people don't really understand the Randle cycle. That's why they're still arguing. You've got one camp that's basically on the low fat and one camp on the low carb, even though the low fat one will cause you a lot of mineral, micronutrient deficiencies, basically, and also protein deficiency on that other one. But it is catabolic, and it will basically, you will lose weight. But not only fat weight, but also muscle weight. You'll waste away, and you'll end up with a much lower metabolic rate. We see it basically the biggest loser. They put them on a low fat. They drive down their levels, but they also not only lose fat weight, but they also lose muscle weight. As a consequence of that, they end up in a worse state long term. They rebound back. So we see that all the time because they go back to a standard diet, engaging the Randle cycle again, fattening up again, but at a much higher rate, because now they're metabolic, their lean body mass has come down, so they've got lower metabolic rates, so they're actually in a worse situation. So, yes. So this is where a carnivore diet actually helps, because you can actually get more leucine in and taurine, which taurine is a myostatin inhibitor. It lowers myostatin, which means, but without affecting the heart. Very important, because we don't want to affect the heart, the remodeling of the heart. Taurine prevents heart remodeling, especially the left ventricular, but also the other parts of the heart. So as a consequence, you can actually safely lower myostatin and get a boost in muscle protein synthesis, bigger, more muscular, sort of. And by adding more meat in, you're actually putting in more leucine and you're magnifying the effect. So that's where the magic comes from, which means eventually you increase your metabolic rate, and over time you will lose fat weight. As you're doing that, I always say to people, target where your energy levels are going to be requirements in the distant future. So basically, say if I'm targeting for a weight of a certain weight, then I'm going to basically have the energy that I require at that weight, approximate, and then I'm going to basically up my protein slightly above that and then bring it down to the level that I need to maintain that, just to basically boost initially in those early days my lean muscle mass. And obviously you can hack that by taking a taurine, more taurine, and taking a bit more leucine, just a biohack that to increase the muscle mass, so to accelerate the metabolic rate, to lift the metabolic rate higher, which means it'll actually force the body to use more energy. So you can do that way more successfully in a much healthier way on a carnivore diet, and you end up with better body composition in the long run. Where on a keto diet, you tend to, especially the new ones, which are very plant-based, tend to waste away, which is not very healthy. But you're right, a lot of these academics and doctors and all that, they don't know about it because it's not in the literature in the way that it should be, unfortunately. Philip Randle published back in 1963 his work, and since then, pretty much it's been forgotten to a large extent in academia, and it's only now and then cited in academia or discussed, but in an indirect way, not in a direct way. So it sort of misses the whole view, where they do talk about excess energy having an effect at the cell level, but they talk it in this abstract reductionist way, and they miss the whole relationship between that, the hormonal system, and everything else that are in play, and that's where it ends. So yeah, the physiology books are very piss poor on this subject, unfortunately. There have been some academics that have tried to basically, g'day Sebastian, have tried to re-increase the knowledge and interest in the Randle cycle. There was a couple of academics that have tried to basically promote it, doing reviews and doing other articles and talking about it. But still, it hasn't getting the traction, because remember, we're pushing the calories in, calories out nonsense. And as long as you're pushing that, we don't want to know about all this stuff, because if you're in a kibble culture controlled by the food industry, they want you to believe the nonsense of the calories in, calories out. They don't want you to know about the Randle cycle, because their foods are highly palatable. So what do? They put a whole lot of sugar and fat in there to make it very highly palatable. They are actually hijacking our system. Our system once knew that seasonally there was sugar. We used to combine it at the end of the summer when there was a lot of fatty animals that had fattened up through the summer. And then you had a whole lot of fructose that was available seasonally. And you would combine fruit with animal fats at the same time, engage the Randle cycle, fatten up. And then through the lean winter months, you would have enough fat stores on your body, like a lot of tribal people have. You can actually see them in those periods. They will actually have a bit of fat on there. They'll have a bit of fat over their, it'll be very minor. I mean, you'll still be most of them are pretty ripped, most of the ancestral people, the tribal people, but you will see a bit of fatness over, their tummy area. It's very little. And then, as they move through the winter, through the leaner or drier months in Africa, they will lean out again. And so they go through this sort of seasonal sort of engaging the Randle cycle for a limited period of time, putting on some fat stores, and then sort of using them and sort of slowly using them up through those leaner periods of time. And that's how we've been doing it for a very long time. And many animals do it as well. They engage the Randle cycle. There's a fish in the Amazon, comes up, eats fruit, and uses fruit to basically magnify its weight. And it goes from a little thing like that to a massive thing like that. And then it goes into deep water. And then when the other fruit season, when it's twice in the year that the Amazon actually increases, and they come back to the surface, eat able to access the fruit, and do this over and over again and just fatten up again. So, so a lot of animals engage the Randle cycle. And actually veterinary people in the sort of animal area actually know more about the Randle cycle than people in the normal human physiology field. I wonder why. I wonder who are writing the textbooks and who are funding the studies and who are funding the research and what goes into those textbooks. Say no more. I'll let you to ponder. I think you guys know what I mean.